career longevity and career longevity, friendship longevity, longevity in their relationships. You know, how do you keep a good thing going? I think there are certain corners of our society.
Blake Lively and Taylor Swift and their friendship has been a huge part of what we've been talking about on this channel with this unraveling of this case. And quite honestly, I view this lawsuit between Blake Lively and Wayfair Studios and Justin Baldoni more as a view into Hollywood and the inner workings of Hollywood and the inner workings of the elite in Hollywood. And I think this lawsuit is showing us and giving us a window into how these people view the world and how they respond to the world and how they feel entitled to the world. And I think a lot of us have learned a lot about this process, from how the PR works to the gamesmanship to the publicists to the studios. We've learned about the film industry. And now we're going to dive into the PR battle that's been going on between Blake and Taylor Swift for the past year. So by now, with the unsealed text messages, you know that Taylor Swift agreed to go to Blake's apartment. And when she was at the apartment, before she got there, Blake sent her a copy of the script and told her, you don't have to read it. I just need you to be enthusiastic, right? And then after the meeting, she sends texts to Taylor and essentially says, like, oh my God, I keep replaying everything that you said in your mind, me and lenses, and how you're my doll, and whatever it was that she said. And Taylor was praising him and telling him that the script was amazing. And I wanted to go through and see, like, well, when all of this stuff came out, like, what was Taylor's response, right? Because before we saw the side of Taylor and Blake, we didn't know what they were saying, right? We only knew what was in the dragon text, where Blake was telling Justin that Taylor is my dragon, and these are my dragons, and these are my people that are enthusiastically here for me. So I wanted to take a dive back into how this was covered in the media to give you a sense of, like, what Tree Payne, who's her publicist, was telling outlets as the news broke about the dragon texts, and how it was broken down about her being asked to delete text messages and her father getting involved, and then the back and forth with attorneys. And early on February 6th was when it was originally published. TMZ ran a headline that says, bad blood with Taylor Swift's bad blood with Blake Lively, I'm not your dragon. Okay. And in it says Taylor feels she was used by Blake in a war with Justin Baldoni, and she resents Blake calling her one of her dragons and leveraging her name. And then it says that Taylor came to Blake's apartment at the time, and Blake told her to, not knowing anyone else would be there. In other words, Taylor had no idea there was going to be a meeting going on with Justin. It says Justin was about to leave after a 2-hour meeting as Taylor walked in, and she was introduced to him for the first time and only time. And we're told all Taylor said to Justin was how excited she was to see the movie because he was her friend's boss. And then it says, our source says Taylor believes Blake timed her meeting with Justin so Taylor would arrive before he left, and is baffled by Blake characterizing her as her dragon. The source adds, it's weird to say that about a friend. And Taylor's sources that they called it uncool and unnecessary for her to be called a dragon. Okay. Taylor is also learning that Blake has been inappropriately leveraging her name for a long time, like telling a young actress that Taylor cast her, which simply did not happen. Taylor feels used, most specifically about the dragon remarks. Okay, so the prevailing narrative right after everything hit was that Taylor would never say that she's a dragon, even though she did. We've all seen Taylor's side of it, and they're literally like gleefully boasting about what a dragon she is, and that, you know, they're the evil dragons. They're like the evil people in Games of Thrones, not the good people, right? And they view that as just like amazing. They're not, Taylor's not at all annoyed by it. She's like literally in the text messages gleefully talking about it, right? Engaging in it, gladly saying that, yes, Blake was Khaleesi and Taylor was her dragon. Okay. And then at the same time, around the same time, a separate article was published by James Fasuka at Daily Mail, so I'm sure this is coming from Tree Payne. But they said that it was uncool and unnecessary for her to be called a dragon, and that was the final straw for Taylor Swift, who never planned to be at that meeting. For the time being, she's taking a step back from Blake because she doesn't want to get tangled in this more than she already has, which is far more than she ever needed to be. Her friends also think that Blake's "I'm Khaleesi and like her, I happen to have dragons" text to Justin was uncool and unnecessary because she was essentially used as an intimidation tactic. She was referred to as some kind of pet or possession. Taylor shouldn't even be involved in this at all. She was only going to visit Blake and Ryan with the understanding that the meeting would be over. Then they went on to say that she's politely backed away from it all. She's conscious of her own image and hates that she was even mentioned. This makes me believe that, I talked to someone in the industry and I said, they had mentioned that Tree's like really mad right now with everything that's been going on with these text messages. And I thought, okay, well, what's going on? Why is she mad? And they think that Taylor lied to her publicist. They think that Taylor misrepresented what happened, not only to her publicist, but maybe even to her father and to her family. And that Taylor obviously knew she was more involved than she was. And by the way, she absolutely was lied to by Blake about a number of things. I don't want to discount that. But Taylor positioned this like she had no involvement. This was a chance encounter. She couldn't believe that Blake would ever call her a dragon. And then only to find out that she's in text messages where she's like, yes, please use me as your dragon. Please use me as leverage. Please use me as your weapon. I mean, if her friends think that it's uncool that Blake would use her, how would these same friends then, if this is true, and I don't even know if this is true, if that's true, how do these same friends then reconcile with Taylor saying, please use me, please let me be your dragon? It was easier for them when they blamed Blake on this behavior, but now Taylor's engaging in it. She's saying, I will be used, please use my music as leverage. We won. I got you in touch with Ashley. We're going to plant this hit piece with the New York Times. I think Taylor lied to a lot of people. I think she lied to her publicist. I think she probably lied to her dad. I think she lied to her mom. I think she lied even to her friends. And I think she was going to let this be all Blake's fault. And again, I'm not saying that this is all Taylor's fault. I'm just saying that Taylor's using her playbook where she's going to, I care about my image more than I care about my friends. And if Blake can be the one to take the fall, she will take the fall. And I'm not sure if Taylor's friends, her other friends, are like this or not. I really don't know. I do think that a lot of the women in this, especially the ones that are the nepotism babies, like Blake and Taylor is a nepo baby in that her dad paid for her to get a record contract with Big Machine Records, and he invested in this record label in order for Taylor to get signed and to make music. And that's just not typically how recording albums or recording contracts are made. And so her step into this industry was vastly different than most people. Her dad was also very wealthy and managed very wealthy people's assets through his working in investments and being a broker. And so she lived in a space where she was given opportunities that others aren't. And so Blake is the same way in that Blake didn't have the same kind of wealth that Taylor did, but her mom and dad had acting backgrounds. Her sister was on, the CW. She was on Doogie Howser. Her brother did some stints as an actor. There was her older sister, Lori, as well. And so by the time she got of age where she could act, it was like there was already an establishment where a Lively's going to audition. Let's look at another Lively. So she's getting auditions not because it's being offered to her. It's like, oh, she's here. I'm going to bring her for my audition, like for if Eric has an audition or if her sister Robin has an audition. And I think what I see with them is that they're spoiled girls that just have had a lot of things handed to them. And so they don't understand the same trauma that the average person has because they don't have to deal with food insecurity. They don't have to deal with poverty. They don't have to deal with you know, pay like living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have to deal with just being normal and having to work and fight and claw their way to get to where they're at. Taylor's dad did all of that work for her. He got her opportunities because of who he knew. And Blake, same with her siblings, got her opportunities because of who they knew. And so I think what's happened is that they both are just relatively entitled people. And I think what happens when you're entitled is that you live in a bubble where you just expect things to be a certain way because it's never been hard. And everyone's just given you stuff when you've demanded it. And the way that they speak to each other is just very unusual. I've never spoken to any of my friends like that where I'm like gassing them up and telling them how great they are constantly. And I was having a hard time with the PR coming out for Taylor because by June, her PR was doubling down, and she says she will forever be furious at how Blake quite clearly was using her for clout and leverage in her dealings with Justin. She really hates that Blake would even think like that, let alone write the things she did in those texts. That was what was given to Page 6 in June. And they were really leaning into it that she was being used as a weapon. So then they went on to blame Justin for revealing the texts. And he says the damage Justin did by revealing those texts, the dragon's text most especially, and by his initial subpoena, even though he dropped it, is lasting and probably permanent. The truth is the text wasn't even accurate. That's not the kind of friendship they ever had. Taylor would never think of herself as Blake's dragon or protector or someone who would interfere on her behalf. For starters, Blake is a grown woman who doesn't need anyone to do that for her. Secondly, she's married to one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. It was never a matter of Taylor believing she'd ever have to fight any battles for Blake, or for her to see Blake use her name in that context was really hurtful. All of that is a lie. All of that is a lie. Taylor wanted to help her. Taylor wanted to have her use her name. Taylor wanted her to take down the patriarchy of whatever the patriarchy in their mind was. I feel like if you're not a Swiftie, and I'm not, if you are a Swiftie, how do you reconcile with the fact that for months, this is what her PR was telling you about Blake? There was more like Taylor didn't even promote It Ends With Us when the movie first came out before any of this drama was revealed. She was busy with her tour. They were baking pals, travel pals, home decor pals, and to be completely honest, billionaire pals. They got along because they lived each other's lives with the sort of trappings and access and privilege that tons of money brings. It was nice to be with someone else who gets it, who absolutely didn't seem to need a thing from Taylor since she was and had her own millions. Swift was deeply wounded, and even if that heals, the scar will remain. So Taylor was leaning into that the dragon's texts were the reason why this friendship eroded. Like, how could Blake ever use her in this way? And what I've found just really unusual about most of this is that the response since the texts were made public, there's been no pushback to the reps that gave this information when they said, we have nothing to do with this. This is all Blake. She lied. She used us. We were not her dragons. And I think Blake did lie to Taylor. Blake lied to everyone about everything. I think Blake was playing everyone. But with that said, like, if you're in this world and you're playing these games, you're all playing each other. And it's just whoever is the most strategic. And I think Taylor's PR was really good for a really long time. But I do think there is one thing that we've learned that was absolutely a lie, and that is the voice memo that Justin sent to Blake in January of 2023 about casting Isabella Ferrer as the younger Lily. And she's titled her character name in the script is Young Lily. And Taylor Swift has zero involvement in that. And she didn't pick young Lily out of a box. In fact, he didn't send that voice memo to Blake and to Taylor Swift. He sent the voice memo to Blake. And then once they met with young Lily, she was cast. You know, they cast Isabella Ferrer, and they had almost everyone cast for this film within a couple months of Blake being added. So the cast is all put together. And Isabel was cast prior to April of 2023, which is the first time that Taylor ever meets Justin Baldoni, and is apparently the only time that they've met. So Taylor has this one-time meeting, and Baldoni never speaks again